Yo, what's up, YouTube Nation? I'm back. All right, today's episode is going to be called Randy Moss. Yes, I said it. Let me say it again. Randy Moss versus Chad Johnson. NFL, who's better? The Minnesota Vikings versus the Canadian Bengals. By the way, I double checked my sources and I found out the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Seattle Seahawks in 2005 for a Super Bowl. It's not the Arizona Cardinals. So I know somebody will be looking at these YouTube videos saying, hey man, you got the wrong team. So I went back on the internet and I did some more research and I found out it was Pittsburgh Steelers that versus the Seattle Seahawks. So, yeah, people make mistakes, and I'm here to tell you I made a mistake, and I double-checked it, and I corrected it, and I'm here to put it in this video. And then, of course, somebody commented on my last video about some unusual way of spelling. Look, pal, when you watch the videos, pay attention to how the titles are being written onto the video. You can go on Wikipedia if you want, and you can see how the spelling of their names are. I don't spell their names that way. That's the way their names were spelled out on the internet. I just try to get it to where you guys can read it. So if there's something that you don't like, put it in the comment section, but don't try to tell me how to do these videos. A lot of people like these football videos. A lot of people are getting ready for the football season in 2 more months. And the last thing I need is to have a troll come on my channel and mess up all the good fun because you and your feelings about 1 or 2 mistakes I make. You're not perfect, and you make mistakes too, and at least between the difference between me and you, I will correct my mistakes after I see the errors in my ways. The question is, can you fix your mistakes? That's why you were quiet in the comment section once I got up in that ass and told you about yourself. So don't ruin it by being an idiot. Everybody likes these videos. Everybody want me to talk about their favorite football team. And the last thing we want is for you to ruin all the fun because you want to be selfish and self-centered and you want to correct me on 1 or 2 mistakes. Because if you do that, I'll stop the videos and we'll just start a different video series on something else. And the people who like football don't want that to happen. They'll get mad at you just for ruining the fun. You know how to say all it takes is one person to ruin all the good fun? Well, it only takes one person, so don't push it. I'm the one making the videos. Now, let's get on with our presentation. Randy Moss versus Chad Johnson, Minnesota Vikings, versus the Canadian Bengals. Now, these are 2 football franchises that are on different sides of the NFL. The Minnesota Vikings have a long and rich traditional history of playing in the NFL for like 60 years. Now, this team has forever made attempts at getting themselves into the playoffs. Now, this football team has gone to the Super Bowl or has been in the Super Bowl, I would say at least 3 or 4 times in 60 years, but they would always lose in the championship game. They would either lose in the Super Bowl or they would lose on their way to the Super Bowl, one or the other. Here, we have a professional football player who goes by the name of Randy Moss, one of the best professional football players of all times. Woo! The Nature Boy! And he was one of the best premier football players that anyone has ever seen in the game of football. The guy was the best wide receiver. This guy could catch the football. This guy could throw the football. This guy could play 2 or 3 different positions if he was asked. This man won football games for the Minnesota Vikings. This guy made the playoffs. This guy turned this football team from second rate to first rate overnight. I mean, Randy Moss stand at 6'2", 210 or 215 pounds of rock solid lean muscle. The guy could run his ass off. The guy was so fast on his feet that you would see at least 5 people trying to chase Randy Moss. That's how fast Randy Moss was. When you played against the Minnesota Vikings, if you were the Green Bay Packers, if you were the San Francisco 49ers, if you were the San Diego Chargers, you had nightmares playing against Randy Moss because you didn't know when he was going to throw the football. You didn't know when he was going to catch the football, and you didn't know when he was going to get into the end zone. And it didn't matter if he was up the middle, down right, down left. It didn't matter if he got 50 yards, 100 yards. It didn't matter if he had 300 yards. You could never tell when Randy Moss was getting ready to take off. And in 10 years, Randy Moss has won the most football games. He's played the most games. He's beaten just about every team he's played against. But there's just one thing on Randy Moss' resume that a lot of people are still asking themselves after 14 years of professional football. He has never won a Super Bowl. He's been in the Super Bowls. He's been in the championship games. And he ain't just get to the Super Bowl once. He's gone to the Super Bowl at least 2 to 3 times. And for whatever reason, he can't seem to get that monkey off his back. He's accomplished everything else in his NFL football illustrious career, except for one thing. He just can't seem to win the big one. He's like the Allen Iverson of professional football. He is the best football player to never win the Super Bowl. He's like kind of in the same class as Terrell Owens and Dan Marino. You're this good football player, this great football player, but you have never won the big one. And it's like 14 years and you still ain't done it. Like when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, the first time in his NFL career, they would win playoff games. They just couldn't get to the Super Bowl. Then he gets to the, teams like the New England Patriots, loses in the Super Bowl when he's with the Patriots. A lot of people felt they should have won that game. He got there, but they lost. He was with the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, yeah, those were 2 teams where he had, at that time in history, he should have actually had a chance to win. You get 2 or 3 opportunities with different football teams to go to the Super Bowl and win. Somewhere your second or third try, you should be able to get one. And unfortunately, he's just going to go down in history as the best wide receiver to play the game of football, but he'll never ever get a chance, like most football players, to ride off into the sunset after being inducted into the Hall of Fame and saying, there's just one thing that's missing from my resume, and that's a championship. I mean, to come back in your late 30s, to come back between the ages of 30 to 38 and play for that long of a stretch is an incredible accomplishment. But people will always look at his resume and say, Randy Moss is a great football player, but the guy ain't never won a Super Bowl. The guy's had 2 or 3 opportunities, and for whatever reason, he could just never get the monkey off his back. The guy plays injured. Most wide receivers don't want to play injured. He plays injured. Most guys don't want to play 4 quarters. He plays 4 quarters. Most guys could get hit real hard. He gets hit and gets back up and keeps playing. Even when people argue towards the end of his NFL career that he was past his prime, he showed that he could turn back the clock and still play as if he was in his prime. He played with the Minnesota Vikings not once, but twice in his NFL career. The guy can adapt to any situation. It doesn't matter if it's hot, doesn't matter if it's cold, doesn't matter if it's a little bit of both. The guy could adapt to the environment. Doesn't matter if it's a hostile crowd. The guy plays in all types of climate conditions, and somehow he manages to pull off feats that our average NFL wide receiver would never be able to do. Even at his absolute worst in a football game, Randy Moss still plays on a high enough level to where people can appreciate the fact that he has reached levels of success that he has never been able to do if it weren't for what he does. And people always ask that OH question, that when they draw comparisons between Randy Moss and And what's that other football player that everyone keeps talking about? I'm gonna research him and do a comparison on him. I think it's Dickinson. Anyway, they always draw comparisons between Jerry Rice and Randy Moss because there's similarities. Both have played on the San Francisco 49ers. Well, not at the same time, but he always was behind Jerry Rice. And he even made some attempts to break some of those records led by Jerry Rice. But the one record he's never going to be able to break is Jerry Rice got him 3 championship rings. Randy Moss played 14 years. And when you look at Randy Moss on television doing commentary, you get this feeling that if the guy really wanted to, if he wanted to, he could just pick the phone up and say, let me go play again. He could have played 16 years because he's in great athletic shape. The guy takes incredible great shape of his body. Like, when you look at him, you sometimes go, this must be a Marvel comic film because he could play Black Panther. He could play Iron Man because of the athletic shape that he's in. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, that's stretching too far. You know, that's wishful thinking. But when I look at him on TV doing commentating for football games in the NFL, I get the sense that he could actually still play football if he wanted to. It just shows that he is still in great athletic shape. He can play 2 or 3 different positions, but he's most named and famous for playing the wide receiver position. And with the history of the Minnesota Vikings, they've only won 1 Super Bowl in 1969. And this franchise has gone to the Super Bowl 4 times in 60 years. That's right. In 60 plus years, the Minnesota Vikings have gone to a Super Bowl at least 3 to 4 times in their history, and they've never been able to come close back to that level ever again. And I believe maybe somewhere in the next 5 or 10 years from now, Minnesota Vikings will win a Super Bowl. It's just unfortunate that it's hard to swallow when you get a guy like Randy Moss and you're just not able to take it to the final stage. I remember when we had Barry Sanders. That's who Randy Moss actually reminds me of. Barry Sanders. Remember Barry Sanders? He played 10 years of professional football, and for 10 years, he was trying to win a Super Bowl, but it would never happen. Well, Randy Moss gave it 14 years, and he had 2 or 3 opportunities, and he still couldn't win a Super Bowl. So when people draw heavy comparisons between Jerry Rice and Randy Moss, naturally 99.99% of the time, they're choosing Jerry Rice over Randy Moss because Jerry Rice has 3 championships. Jerry Rice